Let me set the stage. July 26th, 2024. On normal Wednesday, stuck in the midst of a severe heat warning. There's no better excuse to avoid grass like 94 degrees and zero cloud coverage. Here I was, food in hand, spoon anxious, mouth watering, but somehow, some way, I'd found myself in a predicament. I was tired of watching the same 5 videos of Zanny playing through Jedi Survivor, when lo and behold, I'd caved to watch a video on a game I had never played. A game I had written off as not for me. Elden Ring. Outside of Zanny's excellent editing and humor, I found myself not impressed, and more honestly, I didn't think I'd be able to, nor did I really want to, face the speedy brutality of the bosses he encountered, most notable of which, Margit the Fell. Zanny failed to defeat Margit for over half of the video's runtime, taking cuts in between to do side objectives and explore, in short to level up, both his attributes and his abilities. This was when Elden Ring kindled something inside of me. Ironic, it would seem, that very same kindling would not soon thereafter set the Erd Tree aflame. Despite catching my eye for the similarities to other RPGs I've played, it wasn't until the end of his second video when he sold me. Had I known that a single 5-second clip would submerge me from all social desires for the next 100 hours, I would have watched it far sooner. I'm not sure if it was the vast amount of customization or the D&D-like stats that did it for me. Perhaps both, but who's to say? This is what made me drop $60 on a game that's been out for 2 years. It's important to note that not 5 days prior had the long-hyped DLC for the game, Shadow of the Erd Tree, released. In all honesty, I had no idea this DLC was coming out, and wouldn't have even known about it had it not been for the notification I got of a Zanny video on it. A day passed. So despite knowing nothing about the DLC, nor that much about the base game in general, barring the Souls-like gameplay cycle, I dropped $80 on the bundle for both the base game and DLC. To say I was ill-prepared for the impact this game would have on me would be a disservice, to be sure. It would be unfair to say, though, that I was completely unprepared for what even I had heard to be an extremely challenging game. My repertoire sports a fair number of achievements and a fairer still number of games. Most of these, however, would not adequately prepare me for the combat like Respawn's Jedi games, Fallen Order, and to a greater extent, Jedi Survivor. I did beat both games on Jedi Grandmaster difficulty, with 100% completion on Fallen Order and everything but the 2 double boss force tears in Jedi Survivor. These games formed the vision of what I expected Elden Ring to be like. That vision was flawed. So beautifully flawed. And so, the stage has been set. The die have been cast. It was time for my journey to begin. I don't think anything hit me quite as hard as the title music. It was epic in drumming, and it made me feel a certain way. It's so iconic and powerful in a way that is usually reserved for soundtracks a la Lord of the Rings or Halo, to name a few. I chose the Samurai class, knowing nothing outside of strength and dex being opposing damage modifiers and vitality being health. Stamina I understood, but just not to the full extent. I have no memory of the first boss to the point that I don't even think I fought it. I remember the starting area, easy, straightforward, lackluster. But then I exited that cryptic crypt. After the shock that I didn't have to sit through a loading screen to open a door, I was taken back by the sharp color palette. A facet of game design that feels so often ignored nowadays is the effect vibrant colors can have on a view. Short of Ghost of Tsushima, for obvious reasons, this game is one of the most breathtaking and beautiful games I've seen in a long time. The use of yellow and green just felt so foreign in a world full of grays and browns. The giant Erd Tree backdropping the entire game was just such a beautiful aesthetic, especially when you spend every minute of the main story progressing towards it. Tucking my scenery boner for a moment, I greeted the first not openly hostile NPC. He, as it turns out, thinks he has bitches.
Shall we? Come to the lands between for the Elden Ring? Of course you have. No shame in it. Unfortunately for you, however, you are maidenless. Without guidance, without the strength of runes, and without an invitation, to the Round Table hold, you are fated, it seems, to die in obscurity.
I would be lying if I didn't admit to searching Google for the consequences of killing this Pope cosplaying dick. I saw one comment about how he would absolutely wipe the floor with me, and decided to take my breakfast in solemn silence. Maidenless, it would seem. Then, because none of us are unique, I spent the next 20 minutes having my asshole well acquainted with a golden halberd. I snuck to the first church, acquired a maiden, teleported back to the white-masked virgin, attempted to mock him, got called maidenless again, and then grumpily set off for the ruins. This was, I will admit, the first hard skill check, because let's be real, the tree sentinel isn't meant to be beaten early on unless you're either way better than most people or way more patient. I am neither. The insert region here knight proceeded to deep throat me with his hairy toothpick for the next hour or so, as I failed pretty consistently to first off defeat him, and second off farm him for his armor. I managed to pick up a full set of his armor, and the only thing I would never unequip for the next 100 hours before setting off to get stomped by the first 7 elixir Attack on Titan looking monstrosity that I came across. It only took me 3 tries, thankfully. The first 2 failures were the result of the 4 or so maidenless runts that seemed to get off by peppering me with paper cuts from a mile away. I proceeded to skate by every other enemy due to the fact that I was stepping on one Lego piece in the dark away from ending it all, and took a nap while 3 Call of Duty copyright dogs attempted to teach me the meaning of doggy style. I talked to some dude in a shack who sold a fat lot of nothing useful, and proceeded towards the castle. Fighting my urges as a lifelong gamer, I decided to read for once and discovered that there was a dastardly plot ahead. A ballista. Thing's a bitch when you don't see it coming. So I snuck around, defiled the man manning said bastila for no reason more personal than disliking anyone with ranged capabilities, and touched grass once more. This is where we must take a step back. Everything I've just told you sums up the entirety of Elden Ring for me, because unlike everyone else, I didn't face Margit. I saw how difficult it was for Zanny, someone I think is actually quite good at the game, and explored the opposite direction. I went through the Weeping Peninsula with no direction really, just murdering anything that moved and wasn't a bear, because fuck those rune bears, they're more terrifying than a waterfowl in close quarters. Yeah, okay, maybe not that bad, but as a lowly level 15 weathered copper block, the wild patterns and giant size was terrifying to me. I spent some time screaming as either a fully grown crow, insert joke here, or a dog with the nastiest jawline to ever exist attempted to have me for dinner, before eventually heading to the ruins and such east of Limgrave. Somehow, I never fought the dragon there. I found this guy after beating Concert Radon, so you can only imagine how this lowly dragon must have felt to have the Elden Lord, Slayer of Mikola, Lover of Maidens, roll up at level 190 and kill him in a measly couple of attacks. Back to the story at hand. I opened a chest despite reading once again and knowing it was a trap. Silly me thought it was a lie, seeing as every other fucking wall says secret passage ahead. I was teleported to hell itself, and thus began my crippling distrust of chests. First mimics, now teleporters. Great. After dying about 10 times to an archer that shoots needler bullets out of his body like Spider-Man in webs, and cursing the dead spider that's been under my shoe for the last week, I finally made it out alive. Thankfully, I found the next worst thing I could imagine. The color red. Closely followed by that feeling was upside-down trash can-looking dudes who proceeded to shove toothpicks in my fingernails like Puss in Boots, while their buddies gave me acupuncture that constantly raised my already high stress level. I then realized I could teleport out and vowed never to distrust a message again. This led to countless hours of attacking barren walls at the behest of others. I explored some of eastern Limgrave, spending most of it wondering why I was rolling like my 500-pound life. A Google search, and 3 levels later, I was rolling like a moderately out-of-shape father figure. It was at this point that I was finally feeling bored. Like I had done everything I could until I leveled up and proceeded to the next area. It was then, with a quiver in my step and zero certainty, that I approached the fell omen himself. I summoned the extremely useful chimps prior Caesar's rule, and attempted the so-called hardest skill check in all Souls games to date. Now, I don't actually know if that's what it's called, but I have heard it, like once. Maybe twice. Anyways, being a measly level 39, I absolutely wiped the floor with Margit, and didn't even get to know nor appreciate his moveset. This was bittersweet. No, it was annoying. You see, I had fallen in love with the gameplay and RPG aspects of this game in the last 30 or so levels, and I felt like I had cheated in this moment. Not because of summons, don't even get me started, but because of my level. I had seen and heard of the struggles of so many different people that I let that fear of failure manifest itself in my playthrough. Now don't get me wrong, I didn't farm for runes or levels, I just explored and leveled up organically. But it was this boss fight that to me was easier than the first rune bear to bend me over in a cave that really changed my perspective. Stormvale Castle was tremendously fun to learn and explore, with the exception of A, the birds. Fuck the birds with their crazy movement, inability to be struck, and the fact that they throw bombs at you. God, those things annoy the fuck out of me. And B, the first Crucible Knight. Because like the Limgrave Dragon, I didn't find the Evergoal Crucible Knight until after the DLC was finished. And as repentance for all the times his kin had spanked me like a naughty child at a birthday party, I proceeded to fuck him like Radahn fucked me. To me, this Crucible Knight was Margit. He's my Margit, at least. As such, I've aptly named him Marge. Anyways, Marge proceeded to show me a whole nother interpretation of horny for far longer than I could last, and 30 minutes later, and one moveset learned, I cut off his tail and teabagged him. Vigorously. Having finally defeated the first boss, Marge, rapist wrapped in iron, I proceeded to the courtyard of Stormvale. Nothing of importance happened here, really. I found this chick that looked like the main character of the Groods and killed her because her axes looked cool. Would have been worth it if I ever even equipped them. I did not. Godric, however, was everything I'd expected from Margit. I was perhaps still overleveled, but I was still green enough that I had to tussle with Cyborg for a solid 5 or so tries, barely coming away with distaste for fire that would only grow as the game progressed, and a couple of fresh levels. This being said, I found Godric to be a super cool and fair boss fight, certainly much better than Marge the Molester. I strolled out of the castle after rolling at 5 different walls and comforting a ghost who died a virgin. This brings me to the strangest part of my entire playthrough, Liurnia. I swept through the lands with a hunger that couldn't be satiated. It was here that I learned I hated mages ever so slightly more than archers, because they're the same thing, but deal a damage type that's not as easily negated. A quick sojourn through the magical flipping tower reinforced my growing hate for mages, seeing as my only ranged option was cursing and throwing my controller at my monitor. After teabagging the nobody that lives there, I headed over to Carrion Manor. I screamed when me and my faithful steed were engulfed in a pale Bellatrix Lestrange-looking hand, and cursed as it proceeded to drum its grimy fingers on my body like Chris Tyson on a preteen. With my tail between my legs and my growing racism towards mages, I scampered past most of the enemies and made it to Loretta. To be completely honest, Loretta was everything I had wanted in the game so far. She wasn't too fast or bombastic like Godric, and she was more challenging than Margit. She had some ranged capabilities, but it wasn't overwhelming, and was pretty simple to dodge once you got the hang of it. It felt rewarding when I learned her moveset, and beating her felt good. She didn't feel unfair, and I didn't feel overleveled. In short, Loretta did not get teabagged. Despite there being only one exit, I proceeded to completely miss it and not do any of Ranni's questline for another 20 or so hours. I spent the next 5 hours walking through a seafood-infested swamp and finding nothing but annoyance. I cleared the academy 3 more times than I should have, before realizing I had to take the water turbine to the next level. I spent another 20 minutes cursing the existence of the practice of sorcery, before watching an episode of Merlin to calm me down.
I will not allow you and your kind to poison my kingdom!
At least I'm not alone in my hate. Renala was a joke, but a relatively good gimmick fight. Her first phase was creepy and weird, and to be honest, I still don't understand it. And the second phase was fast and easy since I wasn't committing a crime.
Right to jail, right away.
With my current understanding of the lore, I would assume that her first phase is Rolana now, and her second phase is her at the height of her power before she got her heart broke by the Jesus God-style dual personality of Radagon and Marika. After beating Renala, I realized for some quest, maybe Ranni's, that I hadn't beat Radahn yet. Now I'm like level 70 pushing 80, and have very much held up my vow to forsake Calum, but I wanted Mimic Tier, and to be frank, I didn't realize I could get it without doing her quest, so here I am, at the festival at last. Regardless, the dude has to die, and so I roll into the tournament having no idea what's going on, and nearly attacking every single person I saw on site. I talked to the wolf who can talk, the white version of Blade or something or other. I then proceed to talk to the dude in charge, and he blabbers on about a festival in Radon and yada yada. So I make my way down the lift and take the teleporter. I spend a pretty solid minute or two and about half of my flasks figuring out how to avoid the Thomas Crooks treatment before getting close enough to have Diet Coke cut out from under me and 5 giant purple balls smothered against my body. I can't say I'm a fan of the self-reflection, so instead I just slash him from behind as he wails on the giant pot, who I didn't know had a questline, and White Blade for a couple of minutes. Then he takes off, makes an epic re-entrance, and gets wrecked by my over-leveled ass. That being said, he made an impression. Everything about Radon was grandiose in the best ways possible. I finished the festival, spent 5 minutes debating on killing White Blade, and then set off to activate one of the 5 great runes I would never, ever use. A lot of stressful parkour ensued, with one very angry confrontation regarding a white flame monk and hitting me through the boss wall, and the Godslayer greatsword was mine. I never used it a single time, but goddamn if it doesn't look cool. Anyways, I roll up to Landell pretty happy with the game thus far. Outside of Marge and Loretta, most of the boss fights left me kind of disappointed, and it's important to realize that I thought Landell was the end of the game. I didn't realize there was a mountaintop, Halleck Tree, and Volcano Manor, yet alone Farum Azula. Landell was the first time outside of dealing with Chris Kyle's Academy that I actually noticeably felt the difficulty spike. This would of course be a laughably pitiful spike when compared to the mountaintops, but we'll get there. Landell was fun for the most part. I spent longer than I'd like to admit getting fried by knights cosplaying as Thor, an experience I'd suffer through again when I finally found the courage to venture into PvP. After peeling a staggeringly lame 20-to-1 ratio of common soldier armor to knight armor, I made my way to the only slightly annoying Draconic Tree Sentinel. After having slain his younger brother in Limgrave out of pure spite at some point in the last 20 hours, and then killing his other 2 brothers not half an hour ago, he proved to be just another Ryan to add to the list. So here I am, strolling through like I just killed the king, and now own the place, when it hit me, with such a stunning view. A dead dragon just chilling on top of buildings. If that ain't the coldest shit. And with the Erd Tree right there, the white and gold are just so perfect together. Unfortunately, this view is immediately ruined by more birds. There's some weird Aladdin-inspired marshmallows that are still in kindergarten, just waiting for their chance at being the worst version of an archer. They're not, don't worry, but he's coming up soon. He's next, in fact. It's this motherfucker right here. This perfumer with his bump stock flame crossbow. After losing my soul, all 60,000 of them, and a controller, I've added this one burlap sack motherfucker to the short list of teabagged enemies. He has been dubbed Pusey the Perfumer, and I thoroughly enjoyed dipping my balls in his mouth. Moving on from my attempt to get this video demonetized, we arrive at a distant relative of Marge. This is where I'd like to bring up the repetitive mini-bosses, as they were. It's basically dragons, the brothers of Marge, tree spirits, and the worm tree spirits. I'm actually a fan of the brothers of Marge. They're fun and challenging, and I think they all should have gotten a name. The tree spirits are fine, even if they only do the same 2 moves far too often. Dragons are fine if not repetitive, but the worm tree spirits, man, I hate those things, and are hard to track. Half the time you get stuck in them anyways, so you either take no damage or get killed by an effect because you can't get away. And especially fuck the one in the Halleck Tree. I continued my mission to end the line of Marge, and pushed further up the castle until fighting the ghost of Godfrey, or his soul, or something. It was about at this point in the game that I had made the switch from the Lord Sworn's greatsword, which was the first unique-looking weapon I found back in the ruins of Limgrave, to the Moonveil. Now I am aware that this is not the powerhouse it once was, but supposedly is still stronger than it should have been. Who knows? Certainly not I. I got it for one reason and one reason only. It had some range. And if I had learned anything from playing this game, it was that being able to damage someone's health, stamina, or will to live without being anywhere near them is pretty damn good. So I suffered getting pushed against a wall for 20 minutes while I tried to convince my +7 Holy Greatsword to deal good slashing damage to a magma worm. And then I did it for another 30 minutes because I went to the magma worm that's on the way to Volcano Manor and not the one in the dungeon. So with a dwindling appreciation for floors that burn you, I found out that while I could only level my greatsword to +10 out of 25, I could level my Moonveil to +9 out of 10. Needless to say, Morgott fell as easily as he had previously. I didn't even know he had a spear attack until I saw someone else die to it. Crazy. I walked over Morgott's withering corpse with 10 of my 12 flasks and drank one to spite my full health bar, just to spite him. Not for me, for everyone who had died to him before. Long story short, his half-sister or something, unconfirmed, then tells me I have to light the tree aflame. While generally I do approve of arson, I must say the tree is really gorgeous, and I don't know if I want to do it or not. I then, in search of the Mimic Tier, finally found Ranni and did her questline. Since I did this so out of order, like half of the NPCs were just dead and had their shit lying on the floor. Like the Dr. Disrespect Magician dude was just dead. Anyways, I ran through the super confusing underground cities, all 3 of them, and I must say, I was shocked by the scale of the game. Yes, I know it's weird that this is where it hit me, but still. Not much to note here, outside of the 2 brothers of Marge that I disposed of. The Spear brother was really annoying, but then again, he's no Marge. I walked through the double gargoyles because at this point I was way over-leveled. And outside of my inability to hit Astel, he was fairly easy, and my questline ended with the smiting of an NPC whose entire questline I missed because I didn't know there was one. In fact, outside of Ranni's questline, I only maybe managed to do about 5 questlines, since I didn't realize there were quests and they're time locked at about 40 hours deep in the game. I then got married to the shriveled up version of Four Arms, and then killed her pet dragon because killing her dog just wasn't enough. After suffering through the long wait at Volcano Manor, I became well acquainted with death, as I got harassed by a meteor for the better part of an hour, because stupid me thought he was a required fight to get to the manor. He went on the list. I met the weird lady and her boyfriend, another one of Marge's brothers. I straight up copied Skyrim for 40 minutes, with all the moral implications of killing other Tarnish going right over my head. After 4 casual murders, I was then rewarded with a surprise boss fight. Yippee. I touched dicks with the serpent while trying to shove my katana in his sensitive bits. Rykard then taught me how foolish I was to not pay attention to either the weapon I picked up or the dude who told me to use it. Upon failing twice more and reveling in the pronunciation of together, I finally learned to read and used the weapon I was told to, thus ending Rykard's reign. A fantastic fight, but not hard. If you can read, that is. I then assassinated Astral for betraying the Brotherhood and added another brother of Marge to my ledger. In my growing mistrust of messages, I missed the secret passage, and thus the rest of Volcano Manor went unexplored until well after Melania was felled a solid 10 hours later. I completed one of the only quests I could at this point, and secured the Rivers of Blood, which would sit in my offhand for the rest of the game, because I didn't know how to power stance until I was about 45 or so hours deep. The Fire Giant was tedious, but not hard, since I had well over 50 vigor and the heaviest armor I could wear while not breaking the scale. I sacrificed my maiden, I think, and then found myself in the land of the dragons. Generally, most of the beastmen got ignored while I sprinted past them to brutalize the one archer in the back, and then proceeded on my way. I killed a few dragons for nothing more than a few runes and far too much of my time, but hey, now I know. They're resistant to slashing. Outside of the brother of Marge that I sprinted past because I was out of flasks and the 2 deaths followed by the massacre of birds, nothing of significance happened. The ancient dragon lord fell in one swoop, as I'd already killed far too many of his kind to be caught off guard by anything other than his spectacle or multiple heads. I moved on to the sole surviving brother of Ryan, and his stupid fucking horse. You want to heal? Have a fireball. I died far too many times to this recycled bullshit than I'd care to admit. I killed him, like his brothers before him, and teabagged his horse, Tom Hanks. After getting pushed off the ledge at the start twice in a row, Malekith died easier than Private Ryan and Tom Hanks. His fight was cool and fair. I was just over-leveled and had his moveset down fast, having seen other people fight him already. And so, I went forth, my biggest challenge awaiting me yet. The Blade of Mikola. I trudged through the god-awful mountaintop again, got assassinated by the one dual longsword-wielding banished knight, and then proceeded to one-phase Commander What's-His-Name before moving on. I spent 5 minutes wishing I could see before venturing to a village where I could see everything but the enemies. That was great. I managed to avoid them after the 3rd attempt, only taking time out of my day to exfoliate all 3 of my mana flasks on moonveiling the bodies of the 2 archers. And finally, we arrive. The Halig Tree. If cancer had a physical form, it would be the Halig Tree. After spending 20 minutes getting pushed off the ledge by archers trained by Obi-Wan himself, I made it to the first point of grace.
Anakin! I have the high ground!
My patience was very much strained, partly because I couldn't find a way to take out my revenge on said scum. After a confusing half hour, I made it to Loretta again. Perhaps it was her projection last time, I think. Whatever. She was super easy, since I had already spent considerable time learning her moves, and spent the last half hour dodging various ranged attacks. Continuing on, the Haligtree soldiers are no joke, but they are easy to run past. The Clean Rot Knights, however, are very annoying for the sole reason that one wants to kill me, while the other just stands there with his infinite fucking ranged magic attack. I fucking hate that guy. So, I went back to Caelid to farm his weaker counterparts, just to get the scythe, just to level it up to max, just to kill this one dude with it. He's no Marge, nor his brothers, but he went on the list. In an effort to ruin my mood further, there's 2 Bastilas being watched over by 2 more Bastilas, with 2 Haligtree Knights, who can heal, mind you, and an Erdtree Avatar. After getting skull-fucked for the past half hour just trying to get to this point, I then proceeded to rearrange my wall with my fist. Once I could feel the pain in my hand, rather than the one in my head, I sprinted past them with various screams and sat at the side of Grace with barely any health and a burning hatred. I spent 2 hours farming them. Partly for their armor, I wanted a full set from every region after all, but also because I hated them. Despised them. Using only sharp weapons because dexterity, I ran for my life when 3 rot crystallids tried to touch me without my consent. I struggled through some parkour and made it to the pool of rot. Fuck this place. Can't run, fat roll, archers, rot buildup. And then to top it all off, you have to cross a branch to kill a Wormtree Avatar that's in a pool of rot on an island just to complete a quest. After 5 deaths and an aneurysm, I spent 40 minutes shooting every single arrow I owned at this thing. Then I got gangbanged by Melania's daughters for about 5 minutes. I thought to myself at this point, surely Melania can't be that bad. I've seen both Zanny and Jev fight her, and yeah, she looked annoying, but still. Okay, that's more damage than I expected. About 3 hits to die despite the 55 odd vigor and heavy armor. Okay, she heals like 300 health per hit, even when I block and negate all damage with my trusty shield. Okay, Waterfowl is like getting your cheek spread by a KitchenAid. Oh, and her second phase clone attack thing? I don't even know how to describe that. It's bullshit. Look, obviously this was a hard fight, and I used Mimic Tear. Don't at me, I don't care. After the first hour or so of misery, I was tired of not having a Mimic Tear, so I ganked her. Just to watch my Mimic Tear either A, 2-hand a shield, B, 2-hand 1 katana instead of power stancing, or C, stare at her like she's the hottest chick in this game, which she's not, it's Melina. O, or D, pop a heal at full health while there's a waterfowl taking my virginity. To be completely honest, I don't mind the waterfowl, or the heal, or the boss fight in general. I mind them all together. I think if she didn't heal, then waterfowl would be balanced, and her fight would be better. I think if they lowered her damage by a noticeable amount, then the healing would be a cool gimmick. Perhaps if you could use Scarlet Rot to counter her healing for 10 seconds. Obviously it would do no damage to her because she's resistant, but it would add something fun to it. Anyways, she got bagged. No surprise there. But when I thought this hellhole couldn't get any worse, I went to the street area below the previous mentioned double ballista bullshit. 5 Revenants. Now if you don't know what those are by the name, I'll describe it for you, because I know you know what they are. It's a screaming multi-armed demon spawn of a creature that teleports behind you if you run away, and then menstruates you if you don't. Luckily, you can summon here, so I stayed safely in the corner as my mimic got his balls cut off. If it makes you feel any better, I provided a moon veil every now and then when it felt safe. It was at this point that I realized I had not fought Moog, the real one, not the one in Lanedale. So I went over there real quick and walked through him in a way that's not possible before you've suffered through Melania. Killed him on my second attempt, since I didn't realize I was going to get half of my health chunked 3 times the moment he got to his second phase. I know about the physic tier, I had it after all, but I also had 14 flasks, so why change my physic twice, you know? I talked to Lita and fantasized about her armor before returning to Lindell. Rest in peace to the tree, it was so pretty. Was a bit slow on the Gideon fight since I wanted to listen to his monologue after all, but frankly I just had way too much health and damage negation. He died like every other mage should, without respect nor honor. Godfrey was cool, but died in a phase, his attacks being the same as his ghost echo thing. Horaloo, however, was both fun and fair, but I was far too well trained at dodging, and the bleed buildup was just too good. It's a shame I didn't know more about the lore the first time around, because I love how much Godfrey cares about Morgott here. Anyways, Radagon gave me some issues with his super delayed attacks and the AoE being bigger than I expected, and after 3 attempts I had his moves down pretty well. Elden Beast was just like Flabias or whatever his name was, he just kept running away. I did not know you could use your horse here, so that sucks. Took maybe 6 tries, cool spectacle, but Elden Beast was kinda lame. Honestly, I think Radagon was better. And so, as it 'twas foretold, a tarnished, a lord, rose above all others, his hunger insatiable, his anger inextinguishable. And so it came to be that Lord Chocolate and his faithful steed, Diet Coke, became the faithful consort to Ranni, the Queen of the Moon. Now that all that is done, I finally went and got the map fragment for both the Magic School area and the Weeping Peninsula. I spent some time leveling up and trying different weapons, respecking different builds, and trying to ultimately decide if I wanted to do a New Game Plus run before the DLC. After respecking in and out of a face strength build in like 3 hours, I settled into a hybrid magic dex build. Spellblade, as it were. Obviously this was similar in name only. Not surprisingly, most of the spells I picked sucked. I basically only ever used Rock Sling or Loretta's Great Bow, and finished the base game at somewhere around 65 to 70 hours, and about level 150 to 160. Since I had finished the game, I decided it was only right to return to my roots. I killed that white-masked bitch who called me Maidenless, just to have him call me Maidenless again with his dying breath.
Maidenless runt.
Not cool, but I do respect it. The size and scope of this game was extraordinary. While it didn't take me as long as Baldur's Gate 3, I never felt as though I was looking at my watch or waiting for it to end already. And while the sharp hike in difficulty for the mountaintop in Haligtree wasn't very smooth, it was better than just steamrolling everything there. So here's a point in the video where I hit you with my final thoughts on the base game. Let's start with the bad, because there's less of that to be frank. The hero graves. I hate how the cards one-shot you most of the time, and I hate it even when it doesn't. I know it's parkour and a skill check and all that bullshit, but I didn't pass it. Secondly, the parkour. The game doesn't do great with it. Not as bad as I had heard, to be fair, but I still hate it. That being said, I do suck at parkour. Unfortunately, I don't think it was overused, so I guess it's serviceable. I kind of touched on it before, but the Erdtree worms, and to a lesser extent the avatars, they're just not fun to begin with, and even more so because they're overused. They could have easily been replaced with black knives or actual names and health bars for the Brothers of March. Fourthly, and I know this is controversial, I don't like the quest system. I'm not asking for a waypoint system or glowing light or anything, just give me a journal I can reference. Please, thank you. That being said, I don't need you to hold my hand, I wouldn't mind it frankly, but I would like to be able to reference what the NPC said to me. That being said, from the quests I did do, that did not seem straightforward, if I wasn't using an online guide at least. Like Ranni's questline felt like it was over twice before it was. My fifth complaint is something that I don't necessarily blame FromSoft for. I just wish you could see a recommended level for bosses to be hard but fair. I didn't like rolling through Margit like he wasn't even a boss, but I also didn't want to spend 2 hours trying to push a car up a hill. I'd much rather push a car on a flat surface, if you know what I mean. My final complaint, or at least my final major complaint, is I don't like that you can't pay to respec. Most of the game I picked up all these cool weapons from mobs or bosses, and I can't use half of them because I don't have 24 faith or 20 arcane or 40 strength or whatever the requirement is. I just want to be able to have room to see what they would do if I met the requirements, or just be able to respec more freely. Now the things I like. Where to start? The music is fantastic. The game is beautiful. It follows the Skyrim approach of having moments for you to experience, like when first entering Lanedale, for example. The game is just pretty and has a vast color palette to boot. The environments feel huge, like you can explore everything you can see. And despite the fact that enemies respawn, it doesn't feel inorganic, and perhaps that's due to how good the combat feels, or perhaps it's just the atmosphere that makes you not pay attention to it. That being said, there are undoubtedly comparisons that shouldn't be made, but will be, and since I'm unoriginal, I will contribute to this. Skyrim's quests are straightforward and make you feel important. There's also, more than a handful of friendly NPCs and towns in that game. And the perks. I like perks more than I like stats in Ash of War system. That being said, I do think Ash of War is really cool. It makes you feel like you took that weapon off the boss or learned a spell from watching them destroy you with it. And it's not that I dislike Elden Ring's system, it's just that I enjoy the versatility of perks. Now, I've been in the Skyrim is the best RPG of all time camp for a while. When Baldur's Gate 3 came out, I replaced it because in terms of being an RPG, it is, in fact, better. But Skyrim is more replayable and action-packed solely because it's not turn-based. That's just how it is. I love Baldur's Gate 3, okay? Do not attack me. That being said, I can think of maybe one thing Skyrim does better than Elden Ring, and I think it's objective. Elden Ring is an insanely good RPG. I'd like for them to improve the co-op so it's more seamless with deaths and such, but otherwise, the game blew me away.